Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. So here we are at our last panel discussion of the conference. It's the Geotechnical Engineering Education Conference 2020. I'm repeating this. Of course, we are at the end of the conference. All of us registered participants know about it. But this particular panel session is being broadcasted live. So even non-registered participants, if can view us, and so hopefully there is many of them doing that. So I introduce myself first. My name is Michele Calvello, professor of geotechnical engineering at the University of Salerno in Italy. And then I just briefly introduce our panelists today for this panel discussion. You saw it briefly coming down at the bottom. It's a panel discussion on building a community of scholarly education practice. And so we will have today to talk about this issue Gretchen Bohnhoff, associate professor in civil engineering and environmental engineering at the University of Wisconsin at Platteville in the USA. And then Kristin Semple-Lord, assistant professor in civil environmental engineering at Villanova University, USA again. Joe Tranquillo, professor of biomedical and electrical engineering, but he's here because he's director of the Teaching and Learning Center at Bucknell University, again, USA. And finally, another professor from the USA, associate professor in civil architecture and environmental engineering at Drexel University, Patricia Gallagher. Thank you all for being here and for having accepted our invitation for this panel discussion. I was thinking just about a few words to introduce the topic before handling the floor to you for starting or for real this panel discussion. And to introduce it, I went and read through the description of the panel discussion that, by the way, you can find, for the registered people, you can find it in the GeoWorld forum. There is the description. It's a 2-page document. If you didn't read it yet, even after the panel, you can read it. And going through that, a few keywords emerged. Some of them, of course, in that document are highlighted as section headings, such as permanent structures or special events, repositories that we should use to build such a community. Yet, in my opinion, the most important ones are the words related to or referring to the actors of scholarly education practice. People, us, because we are here in this conference. And because to build any community, you need community members, first and foremost, that's for sure. So in our case, we want to build a community of scholarly education practice in geotechnical engineering education. We need actively engaged colleagues. We need colleagues, and there must be enough of them. That's what I think. They have to discuss, produce, distribute geotechnical educational material to a wider audience that is interested colleagues. And there must be many of them. Then they will work or can work for the benefit of the very many potential learners, undergraduate students, graduate students, but even geotechnical engineers, practitioners. So this is the key issue, in my opinion. Therefore, if we want such a community to be built and then to thrive, above all, to thrive, it must have a critical mass. So I found those words there, critical mass, and those are the main keywords for me in all that 2-page panel description. So in my opinion, if we have a critical mass, then the rest will follow, because it's a critical mass of engaged people that will then distribute to interested people. So do we have that? That would be my open question. And if we don't have that, are we going to get there soon? So with this open question, I just stop in this introduction. And I leave the floor to, first of all, we will have 2 pre-recorded presentations. So they will be streamed one after the other. The first one is from Gretchen Bohnhoff, and the title of the presentation is United States University Council on Geotechnical Education and Research, Educational Resources. I guess you call that you sugar, as an, yeah. And then the second will be from Kristin Sample Lord, results of the 2020 Geotechnical Engineering Faculty Teaching Strategies and Resources Workshop, a workshop that you ran just a few months ago. So we will hear from both of you. So now we will go offline, but then there will be these two pre-recorded presentations, one after the other, and then we will get back live for initial talk by Joe, Tranquillo, and then by Patricia. Okay, so for the technical people, I guess we can go with the two pre-recorded presentation now.
My name is Gretchen Bohnhoff, and I'm Associate Professor at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. I'm also on the USugar Board, which is the United States Universities Council on Geotechnical Education and Research. Many people in geotechnical engineering, both professors and practitioners, have devoted significant time to developing teaching resources for both undergraduate and graduate education. For example, many PowerPoint modules and educational videos have been developed by technical committees of professional societies and organizations. For example, the American Society of Civil Engineers, ISSMGE, the Deep Foundations Institute, among others. Additionally, some professors and practitioners have dedicated YouTube channels where they post recorded lectures or educational videos. One of the organizations that is trying to keep track of some of these resources and provide support for creation of new resources is USugar. Today, I'm going to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about USugar, the history of USugar, and the resources available on the USugar website. USugar was founded in 1985 to provide advocacy for the continued development of high-quality geotechnical engineering research by U.S. academic institutions. About 15 years ago, education was added to the mission. Today, USugar's mission is to provide advocacy for continued development and expansion of high-quality geomechanical, geotechnical, and geoenvironmental engineering research and education, which will enhance the welfare of humankind and meet the needs of the nation. USugar provides a variety of resources on the website. The home screen is shown on the left. Under the Members tab, you can find access to the listserv. The listserv is often used for graduate student recruiting, sharing events such as information about attending GEE 2020, distributing surveys, sharing resources, etc. Under the Resources and Media, you can find the list of geotechnical faculty and research positions, which according to our webmaster is one of the most frequently visited pages. In addition, USugar supports awards related to research, service, and education. Most relevant to the topics of this conference are the Special Projects Grants and the Teaching Aids page, so I will discuss these in additional detail. The USugar Special Projects Grants are available to people from USugar member institutions. The projects must support the USugar mission to further geotechnical education and research. One or more special projects of up to $5,000 in value are funded most years and cover project expenses, including student salaries, materials and supplies, and other direct expenses. Faculty and PI salaries aren't allowed as part of these special projects grants. The three most recent projects are listed on this slide. The first is a group of in-class demonstrations to create aha moments in geotechnical engineering. These demonstrations include a group of YouTube videos, and you can find the links on the USugar website. The second is a library of group activities that promote active learning in the undergraduate soil mechanics classroom. Dr. Kristin Sample Lord and I created this library, and I will discuss in additional details on the following slides. The third project that was completed recently is Geotechnical Software Package in R. So Dr. Sample-Lord at Villanova University and I received a special project grant in 2016, and the goal of this project was to create a digital library of short, less than 50-minute group activities that promote active learning in the undergraduate soil mechanics classroom and are easy for faculty to implement in their own courses with little to no preparation. These are the guidelines that we used to create our library. We wanted to support the mission of USugar by creating useful resources for geotechnical engineering educators. The primary purpose of all of the activities must be to enhance student learning. We had a range of class times between 1 and 50 minutes, a range of group sizes and formats to allow for flexibility in implementing these activities into your existing courses. We also included activities for most major topics that are covered in a typical undergraduate soil mechanics course, and we wanted this overall project to be a valuable learning experience for the students, the undergraduate students that assist with the organization and the development of the materials. We created a total of 16 activities, including activities for most major topics that are covered in a typical undergraduate soil mechanics course, including topics such as soil classification, compaction, seepage, stresses, strength, and also a comprehensive activity which can be used as a culminating experience for soil mechanics. All of these activities included in the library were reviewed by 4 other USugar members with experience teaching undergraduate geotechnical courses at a range of institutions. In addition, several of the activities were piloted in an undergraduate soil mechanics course at UW-Platteville in spring of 2017 before the library was finalized and then shared with the community. The activities also vary widely in their format to complement different teaching styles. For example, there are more traditional quantitative problems, group presentations. Students are asked to interpret data, there are group jigsaws, and shorter concept questions and discussions. Shown at the bottom of this slide are students at Villanova completing one of the activities called Geotechnical Engineering in the News, which incorporates entrepreneurial-minded learning. The materials created for each activity include the following. There is a summary sheet for the instructor with learning objectives and instructions, an activity handout that you can provide to students, there's a solution set, and an example rubric that you can use if you choose to collect and grade the activity. And there's supplemental information that's available if there's raw data, AutoCAD drawings, etc. In the front matter of the library, there is a file describing the contents of the library, including a summary table of activities. So a portion of that summary table is shown here. This table includes a brief description of the activity and the learning objectives and the associated teaching materials, so you can quickly find something that fits with your course. Now let's look at one of the activities included in the library as an example of the types of materials that are typically included. For example, we'll look at the boring log jigsaw activity, which falls under the topic of site investigation. This is a longer activity. It requires up to 40 minutes in class, or it could be started in class and then finished outside of class. Every activity in the library includes a summary sheet for the instructor. So as shown in this example, the summary sheet includes a brief description of the activity, the learning objectives, and any important details regarding the logistics to successfully run the activity, such as assigning group sizes or materials that they need to bring with them. Each activity also includes a student handout with instructions and worksheets. The handout file is in Microsoft Word to allow easy editing by the instructors. All the assignments were designed to allow for minimal to no preparation required beforehand by the instructor. The student handouts include any necessary figures and templates required to complete the activity. This particular activity type is considered a jigsaw because students first evaluate the subset of given data in one group, and then they form a new group to share and combine everything they learned in order to complete the next task. So in this case, they're given information about the boring logs and also a blank template for creating the boring logs. Solution sets for the instructor are also provided for every activity. So for this example, for this activity, completed boring logs and cross sections are provided. And to complete the package, example rubrics are included for every activity in the library. The entire library is available for free download right now from the USugar website. The link is located on the Teaching Aids page of USugar. The downloadable zip file is password protected to prevent students from freely accessing the solution sets. So if you're interested in using these activities, you can contact Dr. Samplelord or me, and we will provide you with the password. When you download the file, you will see the series of folders on the right and the corresponding to each of the 16 activities that we developed. When you open the folder for specific activities, such as the boring log jigsaw example we just looked at, you will see a series of files similar to that in the box on the left, with each of the teaching materials that I just discussed. So in addition to the Special Projects Grant, there is a Teaching Aids page with links to an abundance of teaching resources that continues to grow. You can find this page under the Resources and Media tab. These and other resources were disseminated as part of the Faculty Teaching Strategies and Resources Workshop, which will be described in additional detail by Dr. Kristin Sample-Lord. As we transition to online or alternative delivery because of the pandemic, the geotech community at large were very generous in sharing resources through USugar, and USugar was able to develop a richer depository for people to draw from as they abruptly transition their courses. So this concludes my presentation, and I look forward to answering your questions as part of the panel.
Hello, everyone. I am Kristin Sample-Lord from Villanova University, and I'm delighted to be here as part of this panel today. I'm going to talk to you about a recent teaching workshop that was held and the resources that will be available to you now as a result of that workshop. Through sponsorship by the National Science Foundation and the United States Universities Council on Geotechnical Education and Research, we held a very successful geotechnical engineering faculty teaching workshop this past February. Numerous members of the geotechnical community came together to openly share their educational resources and experiences, resulting in a very valuable experience for the workshop participants and a rich compilation of resources for use by the broader geotech community afterwards. Of particular note is the unintended significance of the timing of this workshop. The workshop was held in February, right before the rapid transition to online learning that was required for educators around the world under pandemic conditions, and the resulting increased interest in resources that are currently available that are effective and easy to implement quickly. So in this presentation, I'm going to first share the approaches that were used for facilitating this unique workshop, and then I'll give you a preview of some of the educational resources that were compiled and are going to become available on the USugar website. That's the United States Universities Council of Geotechnical Education and Research, USugar, the resources that will be available on the USugar website this summer. So the workshop was a full day-long event. And as I said before, it was funded by the National Science Foundation and also advertised through USugar, partly because two of the organizers, myself and Dr. Bohnhoff, are current USugar board members. The workshop was scheduled to be in conjunction with the annual American Society of Civil Engineers Geo Institute Conference. So that's our annual major geotechnical conference in the United States. And it was held on what is typically the short course day of the conference, the day before things really kick off. And that really helped participants who are planning to attend the annual conference anyways to now just come in a day earlier and also be able to attend the workshop with minimal additional travel expenses. A targeted outcome of the workshop was to help faculty teach, quote, smarter by incorporating existing materials and resources in their classes to improve the quality of geotech education at all levels. And so it was really, really important to everyone involved that people left feeling like they had tools and resources in hand that were specific and manageable and useful for their own geotechnical courses, and that implementing them would not require significant compromise of their research time or their other responsibilities. So for that reason, the majority of the resources shared at the workshop were what we called take and go type of materials, handouts, PowerPoint slides, exam questions with solutions, and other things that were really easy to just take and modify to your own needs and use right away. There were a total of 57 participants and speakers at the workshop who I think are all shown in this picture. And we were really pleased to have a wide range of attendees and presenters involved. The group included 26 assistant professors, 13 associate, 5 full professors, some PhDs, postdocs, research associates, and 2 federal employees. One additional note that may have helped too with the workshop attendance is that most of the participants received a small stipend to also support their ability to travel and attend this workshop, which was through the National Science Foundation funding. The workshop agenda was generally categorized into two main themes. So the first was specific tools and resources for geotechnical classes that are out there or that the speakers were happy to share. And the afternoon focus more was on integrating geotechnical research and education at all types of universities, whether you're at a highest level research institution or primarily undergraduate institution. There was an intentional effort made in the development of the workshop to design the sessions such that the formats changed regularly throughout the day. So for example, the first session of the day was performed as a jigsaw, where participants that were in a group were assigned to different stations to learn about a resource from the speaker at that station, and then they reported back to their original group to teach their group members about the resource they just learned about and to review the provided materials. So actually, this picture shown here is depicting that second portion of the jigsaw, where one faculty member is teaching their other group members about the resource they just learned about, and everyone is reviewing the associated handouts together and discussing how they might use it in their own courses. And because that was a very active session with a lot of movement, the next session was more traditional PowerPoint presentations. And then that was followed by discussion-based session and so on. And so these different and frequently changing formats throughout the day were actually carefully selected during development of the workshop schedule to try to avoid mental fatigue and keep all the participants interacting and engaged. And as a secondary benefit, this also allowed for participants to simultaneously experience different potential formats for use in their classroom during their own learning, such as when they learned about resources through participating in a jigsaw activity. As I keep reiterating, it was very important to everyone that these materials were things that you felt like you could just walk out with and implement as immediately and seamlessly as possible in your own courses. And that meant that we desired for all resources in the workshop to generally meet the following 4 criteria. So the first was that they should be free or easily accessible at least, but usually free. And that usually meant they were things that were directly provided to the participants as handouts or files, or they were on current open websites and freely available. Also, the resources should be adaptable such that they could accommodate different class sizes, class durations, and room layouts, because we're all teaching to different types of cohorts. The resources should require minimal effort to implement. I mean, we're all busy, right? And that's why we really want this sort of take and go type of activity or resource or exam solutions and so on that people can utilize. And finally, all of the resources shared had to be specific to or directly usable in common geotechnical undergraduate classes, such as soil mechanics, foundations, engineering geology, things that we all have in common as geotechnical faculty. Because that's one thing that really set this workshop apart from some of the other types of teaching workshops out there. And also the fact that this was focused on resources versus pedagogy. And it really was impressive just how generous all of the speakers and presenters were in openly sharing materials that they had tediously developed for their own use over the years. And it was a wonderful example of the geotech community coming together to improve the state of geotechnical education. The first type of resource are things that are detailed handouts that summarize available online activities and videos for you. So there's a ton out there, and sometimes you just want somebody to hand you a list that says, here's a list of all the best stuff, and here's the links, and here's the classes you can use it in, and how long they are, and so on. So there's a lot of lists like that that provide at the workshop. The image on the right is a picture of one of the handouts provided at one of the Jigsaw stations that is that type of list. So this first part of the handout is looking at the Science Education Resource Center at Carleton College. And that's a great website and database that people can utilize. And as you can see in the second half of this figure, that specific example activities and modules are called out in that handout and described where they would be best used in your course to save you time from really searching through it if you don't have the time to do that. And this same handout continues on to talk about specific YouTube videos, and it says how long they are, what the links are, what classes you could use them in. And the third part of the handout is if you need a full lecture on a topic that for some reason you don't have time to record, you want it for supplementary information, here's a list of high quality lectures that are also available on different topics. So this is the first type of resource that was provided, just distilled lists of things that are out there that you can use right now to make your life easier. The second type of resource were things like the actual student handouts and templates and instructions for doing some class activities or exam problems or assignments. So these are things like Word documents or PDFs that you can just modify for your own class and give to the students, and they can do right away. The example that's shown here is called Geology in the News, and I use it in my engineering geology class. I've modified it for soil mechanics. Lots of us have used it. But it's basically just students work in groups to investigate somewhat fantastical news headlines related to geotechnical engineering, and then they work together to sort of pitch a novel solution in a very compressed time frame. And it gets them excited about the topics, but it's something that's so simple to adapt to your own course and take like 35 or 40 minutes to do to get people interested the first week of class or so. And then it doesn't require any preparation on your own part. So there's lots of things like this in there. The third type of resource are student guides and handouts. So sometimes, students, they may haven't been taught to do things like technical writing reports, or maybe they just don't have the context for the discipline-specific expectations for geotechnical engineering. So one of the great resources that falls in this category of student guides and handouts is a 14-page handout that was prepared by Dr. Michael Malusis from Bucknell University, providing guidance to students about how to write a technical report that it has common acceptable practices for geotechnical engineering and geotechnical journals. And the figure on the left shows just a screenshot of one page of that. It's a whole list of do's and don'ts for creating professional figures, and even pictures of this is a good figure, this is a poor figure, and why. And then the next page is about tables and referencing and so on. So the nice thing about this is it's discipline specific to the extent possible for common geotechnical journals and reports and publications. And this is also really useful just to give your grad students for theses and dissertation writing. And the last type of resource that was shared that everybody's probably really excited about are example exam problems and solutions. Participants were required to submit an example exam problem and solution, and we have about 30 of them compiled so far, and these are just really high quality problems. So I'm showing you, these are nicely professionally prepared. That's why I'm showing these different screenshots of exam problems that span a range of typically soil mechanics topics. That was the requested course type of exam problems, an undergraduate soil mechanics course. And so there'll be at least 30 exam problems with solutions compiled and posted on the USugar website this summer. We will probably password protect it just to limit it to use by faculty. So those are the types of resources. And as I said, I can't get into the specifics of them, but I just want to give you a feel for what those resources are that were compiled. And looking forward, we disseminated surveys and also just from feedback from people at the workshop. It was really well received. I think it was nice that it felt so practical to everybody. And stay tuned for later this summer for all of the materials to be compiled and posted on the USugar website. There has been some discussion at USugar about potentially having a similar event in the next couple of years or so, just because of all the great feedback that we had and the excitement from the group. And the most important thing is that this was successful because it was really a community effort. I mean, just really want to acknowledge all the speakers and facilitators, these high quality materials and efforts that they generously provided really resulted in the delivery of a great workshop and creation of a rich library of resources for the geotechnical community. And participants really deserve to be thanked too, because they showed up and they were all in at this workshop. Everyone was fully engaged and just so excited and willing to share their own insights and resources with like-minded faculty. So truly a community effort, which is great with the theme of this panel, and I'm excited to hear about some of the other things going on. So if you have any questions about the workshop itself, the resources that are being compiled from that, please reach out to myself or the other organizers of the workshop. So I failed to introduce them on the first slide, which I apologize for. The lead organizer of this workshop was Dr. Gallagher from Drexel University, and a co-organizer was Dr. Bohnhoff from University of Wisconsin-Platteville. So we are all more than happy to answer any questions that you have about anything that I discussed today. And it's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you for listening.
All right, we're back. Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, Kristin, for your presentations. I see Marina. She's also joining us in this panel. Thank you, Marina, for being here. So, as I said, now we move to Joe. Joe, you can introduce yourself, say a few words. You are, as we said, you are not a geotechnical engineer. Please.
Sure, exactly. So you've already outed me. I'm the oddball in the group. I'm a biomedical engineer. I know nothing about geotechnical engineering, other than that my father was a civil engineer. So I got a little bit of that. And I was so happy to see you mention Mike Malusis, who's a colleague of mine at Bucknell. We came in together. He lives, I'm not kidding you, 5 doors from me, and he was at my house having beer with a fire pit last night. It was a gorgeous night. So so I know Mike, and I will be quizzing him all about what he showed, because that was something I didn't know that he did. Just a couple of really quick things. I'm the director of our Teaching and Learning Center, in addition to being a professor in biomedical engineering. So my pathway into this was a bit strange, but one of the things that I'll just give as kind of some encouragement is how important it is for faculty to begin getting engaged in some of these programs. And so again, not to completely get on my soapbox, but there's lots of folks talking about, you know, all of this really high-end research, much of it very good research that's being done in high-end pedagogy in engineering. How do you teach engineers? How do you teach in STEM? And there are people that have dedicated their entire career to doing that. And that's wonderful. And there's now training for that, and there's official journals, and there's review processes, and there's special government programs and all sorts of things that are wonderful for that. But not every faculty member necessarily wants that to become the focus of their scholarship. So while it's a great scholarly area, what's so important about the workshops we heard and some of the sharing of materials are the two things that I think got brought up a number of times. One is getting faculty engaged in seeing that there's research and support out there for them. And the other is that community that was mentioned at the very beginning, is binding together groups of people so that when you're stuck with a really hard problem or you don't know what to do, you have people that you feel like you can go to say, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, or I would really love to have a resource that does this. Is there anything out there for me? So that's really, really important, and that it's ready to use, right? That it's not just in the abstract, and I think we saw some great examples of really ready to use. They're ready for the classroom materials. I can absolutely speak to the power of this is in my own field in biomedical engineering. There was a group that was created about 15 years ago that sounds very similar. It started with about 10 people. So you're off to an awesome start in that you had a lot more than 10 people. That group grew from those 10 people to include folks all over the States. It then grew to a branch in Europe. There's now one in Africa, there's one in Asia, and there's a group of us that are also beginning to build one in South America. So I know we're missing some folks if we have anyone from Australia or something like that. But again, this was something that grew from a small group and grew internationally. And it's created just a whole pile of resources, which is important. But again, I want to go back to the earlier comment of how important community is in all of this. We all get better when we share our resources. And I know that sometimes as faculty in our technical disciplines, we like to keep our tightly guarded secrets within our labs because we don't want anyone else to know. That may work great when you're in a technical discipline. I think when you're in education and you care about that, you can spread those materials, and all that happens is you become a subject and a content expert, and other people begin seeking you out. So I think it's a different game than necessarily the hardcore research arena. The other thing I would say is there are lots of faculty who I know who love their technical research and they want to keep doing it, but they're also creating and inventing and doing really neat things in their classroom, but they just think it stays within their classroom. And so what I also love about this is it gives those faculty a chance to actually contribute outside of their technical discipline. And something I've watched happen is a relationship that was built from a pedagogical perspective ended up blossoming into a really interesting and neat technical collaboration. It was very often interdisciplinary. I don't mean broadly interdisciplinary, but with someone within the broad field who now said, we know each other, we know we can work together. How about we work on a technical project together? So again, I'm saying this as encouragement for why I think that groups like this are so important, and some of the things that we just saw are so important. So I'm going to stop there, and I think, is there one more presentation maybe?
Thank you very much, Joe, also for this point of view, and then you were tackling some of the issues that we saw in the previous two presentations, but you expanded on those. I want to ask Patricia if she wants to say something, or if she wants maybe to answer to some of the questions. So do you want to introduce something? I know, the three of you have been working together at the same project.
Right. We're all partners in crime. So I don't, they did a great job covering it.
All right, cool.
I'm ready to answer questions if you want.
Marina, she's in. And because I don't see at the moment questions from our own forum, about our Q&A, but there are some comments in the forum that were put there beforehand. And Marina was somebody also writing on the forum. Do you want to take the floor and say something, or maybe comment on your own comments?
Actually, since we have Joe here, after putting the description in the forum, I realized a very important constituency that we are missing from our community, which is they are not graduate students. In research, there is a continuum from undergraduate to graduate student to young professor to older professors. And here we are without the students. So I was really excited with, now I have watched the pre-recorded presentation, so I'm not sure whose was it, but I think it was Gretchen's, that you have involved undergraduate people in students. So that's really good that you can do it. We have in my university, we have a 5-year program, and the last semester is dedicated to a thesis. It's quite substantial. I would say that many theses are higher than, at a higher level than master's thesis. Some of them get published. I would not dare involve a student in an education thesis because it would be like a blemish on their record. They have a civil engineering degree and they did a thesis on education. So we have problems. I have tried to reach the community, the education community here in Greece. That's how I got to meet Vasilia Christidou. I went into an education conference for kindergarten and grade school and high school. And when I try to talk to them about our problems, it's like, okay, good luck. So, Joe, can you help?
I don't know about help, but I think that, what you're pointing to is a problem that happens in almost every academic discipline, especially at the college level. If you're a kindergarten teacher, if you're a teacher in secondary schools, you get training, there's certification, you have to be taught how to teach. My wife is one of those people. And so she always laughs when I talk about things and they say, the folks in kindergarten have been talking about that since John Dewey in like 1910, right? This is not new stuff. It's not, rocket science. But again, I think a lot of it is because we make the assumption that if you're a really, really smart person and you get a higher degree in a very technical discipline, that you'll figure it out. And that may be true, but I think that what workshops and groups like this can do, and I hope offices like mine as a teaching and learning center can do, is to catalyze that. And a lot of that is just bringing it to the level of awareness that this is an important part of your job, and it's an impactful part of your job. Getting your citations higher, creating it, getting a new paper, getting a new grant is great and wonderful, and that's for you and your lab, and you hope that those things go out and make a difference in other people's lives. But there's another path, a parallel path, and that's through your students. And I think that one of the most difficult parts about this is that anyone who's been teaching for long enough begins to realize that in many ways, your true impact, your greatest impact, is often going to be through your students. It's not always easy to convince new faculty of that because they haven't had that experience yet. And so the advice that I've given lots of faculty developers, and I would say that everyone on probably listening here in one way or another is some sort of a faculty developer, is when you work with new faculty or grad students, start small, right? Give them a little taste, give them one of the exercises that you had, and let them try to run it. Let them try to run a jigsaw and remind them that just like in their research, the first time that they tried to actually do something, it may not have gone as easily or it was quite the way they hoped it would. And then you can give them coaching, right? We all remember that first paper that we wrote or first abstract we wrote and our advisor tore it apart. But hopefully if we had good advisors, they did it with some compassion and they gave us good advice and it made us better. You can do exactly the same thing with grad students, with new faculty, is to help them get better at thinking about this. And it then goes beyond just how to run a jigsaw. It begins to seep into them over time of what does it look like to actually be an effective educator. And I think it takes time, just like anything else. Being an effective researcher takes time too. But if you remind them of those things, it doesn't sound quite as daunting. So I'm going to stop there because I saw other folks smiling and
yes, well, no. I'm trying actually to escape the sun because I have a problem with my curtain. So like the sun is coming and I'm trying to move away from it. But Patricia wanted to comment on it.
I think that the paradigm is shifting a little bit. So at Drexel, we have a whole center called the Center for Advancing STEM Teaching and Learning Excellence. And it's funded by a grant through the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and they run programs for faculty, but also for graduate students. So many of the engineering and STEM graduate students actually get a minor in education, where they take courses on pedagogy and how to do effective literature reviews in education and other sorts of courses. They actually then come into classes and they implement some of their ideas into modules. So I've mentored graduate students who are doing a minor in education. And so I think there's been a shift, certainly in the 20 years since I have been teaching, that this has been more of a focus. Actually, I realized just the other day that I met Marina back in the 90s when she critiqued me at the first teaching workshop I ever went to. But that was really novel then. It's become more and more common. I think that certainly in the US, most civil engineering faculty are encouraged to go to an Exceed workshop or a NETI workshop, which is the National Effective Teaching Institute workshop by the American Society of Engineering Education. And so I think there is a shift now where it is more acceptable to care about teaching and to spend some time becoming a teacher, right? A good, effective teacher. I don't think it's rewarded the same way that getting another research grant is, but I do think there is some recognition and there's more support than there used to be.
Thank you for this. Indeed, the four of you, no, me and Marina, no, but the four of you are all coming from the US. And I'm actually pretty sure that the situation in the US is not paradigmatic of what's the situation worldwide. Indeed, maybe you are leading in this field. So you're saying now that there is a paradigm shift in your place, and I'm assuming it's widespread, or is it just in a few universities that these things are picking up? But I
think it's pretty widespread. So when I was doing my PhD, my department established a program for future faculty. So and this was back in the 90s, I was mentored by a senior faculty member, not very well, but I was mentored. And I actually taught an undergraduate class before I ever got my PhD. And more universities have programs like that. And, the Center for Advancing STEM Teaching and Learning Excellence at Drexel is sort of the next level beyond that, where it's trying to have a broad conversation across all of the different STEM disciplines. So we have, for example, once a month, we have a pedagogical happy hour. So somebody from chemistry or engineering or somewhere comes in and talks about some of the strategies they're employing. And I have no stake in Castle, so I'm not trying to sell them. It's just an example of what's going on. And I think that is pretty common. And Joe, you can probably comment too. And I think Kristin has something at Villanova where they educate faculty. And so I do think it's more common. So I'll be quiet now and let you guys talk.
I would say yes, absolutely. In the States, what I heard was what about outside the States? And
no, yeah, that's the thing. I would also ask our audience if they want to comment on that in the chat, in the Q&A. But I'm saying that in many countries, for instance, in Europe, but it's not common at all. No, in Italy, we don't even have teaching.
I would say I think it's coming, and the anecdotal evidence that I would give for that is I used to get invited to go and give teaching workshops and seminars and things like that. And only in the States. And over the last probably decade, most of my travel for teaching workshops has actually been international, mostly South America and Europe. But I know that there's also some in Africa. There's certainly things going on in Asia. So again, I don't know about specific centers, but I certainly do know that there's a hunger. And it's beginning there, I think, exactly the same way as it happened in the States, which was folks were brought in to kind of kickstart things, right? To get people hungry, to get enough of that, you mentioned the core group together to rally around it. And I think that it's happening.
Because I see that the time is running very fast. Indeed, we are already, over our timing, but we started slightly later. I would like for the final part of this discussion to shift the conversation to the issue of repositories, because the first presentation was about the resources that you have there available for everyone. You sugar, even second presentation, and maybe you told us there will be more in the coming weeks. That's what I understood. I'm wondering. Well, first of all, specifically a question to Gretchen. Do you have statistics on the use of those resources? Like how many times they've been used by who, from where, for which kind of faculty members are accessing those resources besides the core group that produced them? And then on top of that, maybe we can freely discuss about that, whether there is a need for multiple repositories done in different places, or like there, maybe in the States, you already established this community and it's already there set with this specific initiative, USugar. Maybe we can mirror that, or maybe we can link to that. We don't have to repeat all the time or do the same. Everything now can be shared worldwide. So those are stimuli for discussion. So Gretchen, maybe first, and then whoever wants to pick it up.
Yeah, I can comment. So I don't think we have exact numbers about how many people have downloaded the materials off the USugar website. I think we've kind of looked for that, but haven't been able to find it. We also created a survey where we were just requesting that people would take the survey and let us know what they used. But without making that a requirement, the responses have been limited. So I think in the future, if we were to do something like that, we would say, you may see these materials, but please complete the survey in order to have those materials. But we do get quite a few requests still for the password information. So we know that people are continuing to download it off the website.
And I can add to that. I'm also in the middle of transitioning to taking on the webmaster role for USugar. So I don't know all the statistics, but I know they are there. The resources that are on there are open to everybody. When there is a password protection, it's usually something that has things like exam solutions and so on that we just want to kind of check that it's faculty that are accessing them. And the USugar listserv currently has a little under 500 people on it. So I would say, and I think people in the US would agree, that USugar has kind of become the backbone of our communication for the geotechnical community. And so that seems to be working well for us as a place to keep these resources and collect them.
I'd just like to add something to that. If we could get a central repository for all of this stuff internationally that would have some kind of funding to help host it, I think that would be a great idea, because USugar is a volunteer organization and it really relies on the goodwill and grunt work of one or two people for a period of a couple of years. And so Kristin's taking on this very big role as an assistant professor. She's not getting a reward for that in any way other than, serving the profession. And so if we could find a place, and maybe ISSMGE, the website is the place to do it. But if we could find a place to host this stuff and keep it updated, that would be tremendous. That would be a great win for our entire community. And I know we have to move on, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah. No, just okay. So I guess the time is up for us, and I thank you all for the interesting discussion. But I want to give the floor to Marina. But yeah, first I thank you. But then Marina, you have to unmute your mic. You want to talk, please?
So while we are all here, I would like to say something about our invited people. Joe, thank you so much. We invited Joe the last minute, just a week ago. We asked him, would you like to spend lunch with some engineering faculty? And he said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Now the USugar ladies, we thank you for opening all this new information here to us. And at this point, I would like to say that I'm not telling them goodbye after, when we close the conference, because we decided to work together and see whether we can organize together the next conference. So perhaps you have something to think about for 2024. If we do that, it will be in the United States. So pack your suitcases, especially now that you're stuck at home.
So this is news for our audience that you're giving. And so with this, I guess we can close this panel discussion. I thank you all. Thanks Marina, and thanks to our panelists, the outlier and the others, all from the States anyway. And thank you to the viewers. I'm not sure how we go about it. Are we staying here, me and Marina, and then somebody else? We can go for a few seconds.
Margarita is joining, and then the United States is going home.
Okay, yeah, that's the thing. So I'm staying. Okay, so I will be staying here live for the rest of the closing ceremony. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye.